Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into an absolutely thrilling period of rebirth in ancient India as we explain this incredibly rich chapter of history. We're going to explore how this perfect storm of geography, breakthrough technology, and evolving human organization built political systems that were honestly surprisingly modern. If you've ever wondered how scattered rural villages somehow transformed into massive, fortified states, well, you are definitely in the right place.
To kind of get us into the right headspace for this, think about this powerful quote from Kautilya's Arthashastra. He wrote that a kingdom shouldn't just be protected by fortifying its capital, but it should also have a productive economy with a wide variety of commodities. This wasn't just about basic survival. It was literally a blueprint for absolute prosperity and the incredible rebirth of an entire civilization. It just paints this amazing picture of ambition and serious statecraft.
So, here is our agenda for today. We're covering India's second urbanization, the rise of the Mahajanapadas, kings and early democracies, and finally, the engine of innovation.
Let's jump right into Section 1, India's second urbanization.
Okay, so we are looking at an incredible 1,000-year gap in history here. India's first urbanization, the famous Harappan civilization with its incredible sanitation systems, bustling markets, the written language, that all basically disintegrated in the early second millennium BCE. The cities were literally just abandoned. For an entire millennium, the urban order completely vanished, and people reverted back to a very rural, village-based lifestyle. So the big question is, how on earth did a complex society finally bounce back from a 1,000-year slumber?
Well, what's really fascinating here is the geography. If you picture the vast, green expanse of the fertile Gangetic Plains, you'll see why. Sometime in the first millennium BCE, this specific geography acted as the ultimate catalyst for a vibrant new phase of cities. The abundant water and super fertile soil provided the absolute perfect environment for a massive agricultural surplus. And as we know, that surplus is the absolute prerequisite for building cities. This era became known as India's second urbanization. And honestly, the most incredible thing about this phase of urban living has continued unbroken right up to the modern day.
Moving on to Section 2, the rise of the Mahajanapadas. Now, to really understand this political shift, we've got to decode the language a bit. The key term here is Janapada. In Sanskrit, Jana means the people, and pada means foot. So quite literally, it translates to where the people have set foot. It's just this really beautiful linguistic snapshot of nomadic or rural clans finally putting down their roots, claiming a specific piece of territory, and basically saying, all right, this is ours, we're settling here. So how exactly do we get from a small local settlement to a massive state? Well, the logic flows perfectly across three main steps. First up, people sharing a common language and customs form cohesive clans. Second, those clans settle down and secure their Janapada territory under a ruler. But Step 3 is where things really explode. As trade networks expanded and started connecting these regions, those smaller territories began to merge. And by the 8th or 7th centuries BCE, these mergers created much larger, incredibly powerful units called Mahajanapadas, which literally translates to the Great Janapadas.
The sheer scale of this rebirth is honestly just staggering. We're talking about 16 major Mahajanapadas stretching all the way from Gandhara in the northwest, way down to Anga in the east, and reaching deep into central India. And the concentration of power right there in the Gangaric Plains is unmistakable. These were not just loose tribes anymore, you guys. These were highly fortified, super powerful states with serious geopolitical influence.
But here's a question for you to ponder as we think about all these vast territories. Were all these brand new, massive states ruled by absolute kings? When we think of the ancient world, we usually just picture a solitary monarch holding all the power, right? Well, the reality of ancient India is about to completely subvert your expectations.
Which brings us to Section 3, Kings and Early Democracies.
Now sure, many of these states definitely fit the expected structure of ancient power. You had these major monarchies, like the ridiculously powerful states of Magadha, Kosala, and Avanti. In those systems, a hereditary Raja, usually the son of the previous ruler, was the absolute ultimate authority. They collected taxes, they maintained massive armies to wage wars or defend borders, and they built these highly impressive fortified capitals to really project their strength.
But this is where history throws us a massive curveball. Think about the systems used by states like Vajji and Malla. These were known as Ganas or Sanghas, and they did not have a hereditary king calling all the shots. Instead, their assemblies, these councils called the Sabha or Samiti, held the real authority. They would discuss vital matters and actually make decisions by voting. And even more astonishingly, these assemblies even voted to select their Raja. So the crucial takeaway here is that we're literally looking at some of the world's earliest democracies or early republics. Ancient India wasn't just this monolith of absolute kings, it was a vibrant working laboratory of different political systems.
To really ground this history in reality, just think about the ruins of Rashagriha, the ancient capital of the mighty Magadha Mahajanapada. They built these massive walls and moats to control trade and protect the citizens. And what's truly mind-blowing to me is that a lot of these ancient 2,500-year-old capitals haven't just faded away into the dust. They're actually still living, breathing modern cities in India today. All right, our final stop, Section 4, the engine of innovation.
So, the great enabler of all this second urbanization? Iron. While the ancient Harappans were busy using copper and bronze, this brand new era was forged entirely in iron. Now, the techniques to actually extract and shape iron were perfected way back in the early 2nd millennium BCE, but it definitely took some time to scale up. By the time of the Mahajanapadas, though, iron tools were everywhere, and this is absolutely crucial because iron axes allowed people to clear out thick forests for large-scale agriculture, which is exactly what was needed to feed these massive new cities. Plus, of course, it allowed armies to equip themselves with lighter, sharper, and far more deadly weapons.
But having massive cities like Kaushambi required really complex economies. You can't just efficiently barter grain for heavy iron swords on a massive statewide scale, right? So the real game-changing innovation here was punch-marked silver coins. This was actually the very first use of coins in India, and it was born purely out of the absolute necessity to handle rapidly growing regional and international trade. Because of this, wealth could now be stored, taxed, and exchanged with just incredible efficiency.
So, we've seen how geography, agriculture, iron, and money all combine to totally resurrect city life in ancient India and build these magnificent, complex states. But I want to leave you with a provocative thought as we wrap up this explainer on the chapter. As these societies became vastly more populated and their economies grew incredibly specialized with, hundreds of different professions, how did the people begin to divide and organize themselves socially? This rising complexity perfectly sets the stage for the emergence of the Varna Jati system, which was a massive social shift that would change the fabric of Indian society forever. But we'll have to save that deep dive for another time. Thanks so much for joining me to explore the amazing chapter of these new beginnings.